Dive Podcast, straight talk on politics, national security, and America's future. With Robert Johnson and Linda Miller, we cut through the spin, tackle the tough issues, and give you the real story behind today's headlines. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell to stay informed.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep into, well, a real flurry of activity around Iran's nuclear program lately.
Yeah, a lot happening.
We're focusing on the latest moves between the U.S., Russia, and Iran. It's not just about, what happened when.
Exactly.
It's about trying to grasp this really intricate dance of international relations and what it all might mean for global stability.
And what's really striking here is just how fast things are moving. It's really laying bare these underlying tensions, the alliances that maybe were simmering below the surface.
Right.
So we'll explore the recent U.S. strikes, Iran's reactions, Russian President Putin's position, and this whole ongoing saga, which seems increasingly strained, with the International Atomic Energy Agency.
Yeah, the IAEA.
You'll see how, one move really does impact all the others. It's a complex picture.
So let's start with what kicked things off just last night, really. The U.S. launched these, pretty unprecedented strikes. The U.S. Air Force and Navy hit 3 absolutely crucial Iranian nuclear facilities, Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan.
Key sites.
Yeah, and the U.S. President Trump stated the aim was to stop a nuclear threat. He referred to Iran as a sponsor of terrorism.
And these aren't just any facilities, right? Natanz and Fordo, they're the main spots for uranium enrichment. That's the core of it.
The heart of the program.
Exactly. And Isfahan has the Nuclear Tech Center, conversion facilities. Hitting them is a direct blow to their capabilities. We also heard from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, didn't we?
We did.
He commented on approaching goals in both Iran and Gaza. Seems aligned with the U.S. President Trump describing the damage as, quote, monumental.
Monumental, yeah. So it suggests a pretty forceful message was being sent, a real escalation.
Definitely.
So given how significant these strikes were, the big question was, okay, how is Tehran going to react? This wasn't just talk. This was military action.
And they reacted quickly. Iran announced retaliatory actions almost immediately, framing it in really serious terms.
So serious.
The Speaker of their parliament, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, he said the U.S. had, and this is a quote, officially entered the war.
Wow.
Yeah. And he also suggested, interestingly, that Israel couldn't confront Iran directly. He pledged Tehran would respond and make the U.S. President Trump regret his aggression.
Strong words.
Very. But then Tehran also claimed its nuclear facilities were evacuated before the strikes hit.
Oh,
and that their uranium reserves were, quote, untouched. They're sticking to their line that the program is peaceful.
Right, the peaceful program narrative.
So they're trying to manage perceptions of the damage and their intent. But what's clear is both sides see this as a major escalation. It feels like a shift maybe from proxy conflicts to something more direct.
Which is a big change.
A huge change for the region.
And this is where the diplomatic chess game really heats up, isn't it? Amidst all this tension, Iran makes a very direct, very significant approach to Moscow.
Yeah, that's right. Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araki, he traveled to Moscow. Not just any visit, a specific mission.
With a clear purpose.
Exactly. He was there to hand-deliver a letter from Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, directly to Russian President Putin.
A letter from the top. What did it ask for?
Specifically asking for support for Tehran after these U.S. strikes. Apparently, there's a feeling inside Iran that Russia's support, hasn't been quite impressive enough so far.
Okay.
They're looking for Russian President Putin to, quote, do more, which puts Moscow in an interesting spot.
Yeah, that direct appeal really highlights maybe how isolated Tehran feels and how important Russia is to their strategy now. But what about the supreme leader himself, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei? What's his situation? Making this appeal from where?
Well, the information we have suggests he's currently in a bunker.
A bunker?
Yeah, for security.
Yeah.
Communicating only through a trusted aide, avoiding electronic means. It shows how serious the perceived threat is.
Definitely.
And we also understand he's reportedly chosen successors, just in case. Preparing for all possibilities, which again underlines the gravity of the situation.
Wow. Okay, so Iran's directly asking for help. What has Russian President Putin's public stance been? How is Moscow responding to this formal request for more involvement?
Well, publicly, Russian President Putin's response was very clear. He called the U.S. strikes unprovoked aggression, said they have no justification.
No mincing words there.
Not at all. He made that very clear when he met with the Iranian foreign minister. He stressed Russia's known position, the one articulated by their foreign ministry, voiced at the UN Security Council. So a firm diplomatic alignment with Iran against the U.S. action.
Okay, strong condemnation. But is it just words for the international stage, or does it signal, a move towards more tangible support? What's Russia's actual role looking like here?
Well, Russian President Putin did say Russia is actively making efforts to help Iran. He even offered to collaboratively consider solutions. That sounds like it goes beyond just condemnation.
Possibly.
Suggests a willingness for practical help, strategic discussion. And remember, Russia had urged Washington not to attack Iran before this happened.
Right, they warned against it.
Yeah, the Russian Foreign Ministry called the U.S. decision irresponsible. And they highlighted the consequences, including potential radiological ones that still need to be figured out.
Radiological, that's a serious concern.
It points to Russia's worry about the wider impact, not just the immediate conflict, but regional stability, long-term environmental issues too.
Given how high the stakes are, you'd think there'd be some communication between Washington and Moscow before something like this. Was there any direct talk?
Dmitry Peskov, Russian President Putin's press secretary, he confirmed that, yes, Iran comes up repeatedly in talks between Russian President Putin and the U.S. President Trump.
Okay.
But crucially, there was no detailed informing from the U.S. side about these specific strike plans.
No heads up, basically.
Not in detail, no. Their last official chat was June 14th, which was actually the U.S. President Trump's birthday.
Oh.
In that call, Russian President Putin condemned Israel's operation, while the U.S. President Trump, though he called the situation alarming, praised the effectiveness of Israel's attack. So clearly different views even then.
Yeah, a real divergence.
And you might recall that time the U.S. President Trump responded to Russian President Putin's offer to mediate between Israel and Iran.
Vaguely. What was it?
He basically said, do me a favor, mediate yourself first,
right,
referring to the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Yeah, yes. Shows the tension there.
Definitely. So Peskov's general comment on what Russia might do for Iran now was just everything depends on what Iran needs. Very open-ended.
Keeps options open, doesn't commit.
Exactly. A diplomatic tightrope.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Beyond the military and diplomatic back and forth, there's this other critical piece. Iran's relationship with the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the nuclear watchdog. How does that fit in?
It fits in significantly. The Iranian parliament is now planning to pass a bill to actually suspend cooperation with the IAEA.
Suspend cooperation. That's major.
It is. The speaker, Ghalibaf, again, explicitly said the IAEA has turned into a political tool and failed to fulfill its obligations. He said cooperation would stop until Tehran gets, quote, objective guarantees of professional behavior from the agency.
So a direct challenge to the international inspectors.
Absolutely. It complicates oversight, transparency, everything.
Why now, though? I mean, deciding to potentially suspend cooperation with such a key body, how did the relationship get to this point?
Well, it's been deteriorating for a while. IAEA inspectors used to visit regularly, but cooperation has weakened significantly over recent years.
Okay.
That Israeli operation back on June 13th that basically stopped the inspections. But even before the U.S. attack on June 22nd, Iran had already restricted IAEA access to a lot of its centrifuges.
So the rot had set in earlier.
The relationship was already quite poor. Then in mid-June, the IAEA passed a resolution. It stated Iran wasn't meeting its non-proliferation obligations.
What specifically?
They noted Iran hadn't provided technically justified explanations for finding uranium particles at undeclared sites. That's a big red flag.
Undeclared sites.
The IAEA head, Rafael Grossi, he said Iran repeatedly either did not answer questions or provided technically unreliable answers. So basically accusing them of stonewalling and being untruthful.
Not a good sign. And how did Iran respond to those accusations from the IAEA, especially the undeclared uranium particles part?
Iran's foreign ministry and its atomic energy organization, they dismissed the resolution, called it politically biased and legally unfounded.
So push back hard.
Yeah. They maintain they're sticking to their obligations. It's a direct standoff with the global watchdog. Now, add this to the mix. As of mid-May, Iran had nearly 409 kilograms of highly enriched uranium.
Highly enriched, meaning?
And enriched to levels like 90% or more, suitable for weapons, not just power plants.
And 409 kilograms is a lot.
Theoretically, it's enough for about 10 warheads.
Yeah.
And here's the really concerning part. The location of this material. It's currently unknown.
Unknown location. For that much HEU, that's alarming.
It's incredibly alarming. It's not just a technical detail. It massively ramps up the proliferation risk. It shifts the concern from just can they build a bomb quickly to do they already have the core material for several and we don't know where? That changes the security calculation for everyone.
Right. So this deep dive really shows, just how complex and fast-moving everything is in the Middle East right now. You've got these major global players in this really delicate balance. Military action, diplomacy, international oversight.
Yeah, we've traced a clear path of escalation, haven't we? From the strikes to the urgent appeal to Moscow, all happening while the relationship with the IAEA completely falls apart. And we've really seen how one nation's actions just ripple outwards, affecting non-proliferation, diplomacy, mediation efforts. It makes you think about how interconnected global security really is. One strike sets off this cascade.
Pushing the region somewhere new, somewhere uncertain.
Exactly. And maybe the critical question that emerges from all this is, are we seeing a sort of deliberate, calculated path towards a new regional order? Or is it just a series of reactions escalating, maybe unintentionally, towards a much larger conflict?
Subscribe to our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. We are here to make things clear. New episodes every day.